to the day's program by Center for Knowledge Sovereignty. I also extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speaker of the day, Lieutenant General Dr. Rakesh Sharma sir.
Remaining standoff points in Ladakh, Depsang and Demchok. Of course, it's a million.
That the probability of a conventional war all out between two nations is much less.
Namaste, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to the day's program by Center for Knowledge Sovereignty. I also extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speaker of the day, Lieutenant General Dr. Rakesh Sharma sir. Thank you for joining us, Lieutenant General Dr. Rakesh Sharma sir. It was our pleasure to have you with us for the second time now. Before I introduce the speaker, I will briefly introduce our think tank CKS. CKS is a non-partisan nationalistic think tank established more than a decade back with focus on the spheres of information technology, geospatial technology, public policy, research, and national security, along with geopolitics. CKS has been a pioneer in spreading awareness about data sovereignty and cybersecurity at strategic, political, and national levels. Please visit our website www.cksindia.org to know more about us and for regular updates. Requesting everyone to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as well to stay updated. Over the past few years, CKS is privileged to host on its platform several discussions, roundtables in person and virtually. And since COVID-19, we have initiated several virtual discussions on several different topics. Thus Spake Generals is one such program which has completed 4 seasons. Today, we are happy to start the 5th season of our highly acclaimed flagship webinar, Thus Spake Generals. We are extremely honored to share that in the past 4 seasons, we have had the privilege of hosting excellent speakers and thought leaders on our platform, such as Lieutenant General PR Shankar, Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, Lieutenant General Syed Ata Hasnain, Vice Admiral Sekhar Sinha, Air Marshal SS Soman, Air Vice Marshal Arjun Subramaniam, Air Marshal Anil Khosla, Lieutenant General Dipender Singh Hooda, Lieutenant General Zamiruddin Shah, Vice Admiral Anil Chopra, Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, who is here with us today as well, Rear Admiral Sudarshan Shrikhande, Air Marshal D Choudhary, Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, Lieutenant General Shokin, Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, Lieutenant General Vinod Khandare, and Lieutenant General Satish Dua. In this session also, we have a very impressive lineup of speakers. Today in our inaugural talk, we are honored and privileged to have a very highly decorated veteran, Lieutenant General Dr. Rakesh Sharma, PVSM, UYSM, AVSM, VSM, who in his last 40 years of illustrious career, post-commissioning in the Gorkha Rifles in 1977, has had extensive operational experience in Jammu and Kashmir, Northeast, and on the western borders. General Sharma commanded the Fire and Fury Corps in Ladakh, facing both Pakistan and China. The general was the adjutant general responsible for the human resource management of the Indian Army also. The officer had trained the Botswana Army for 3 years in Africa and attended the National War College at Abuja, Nigeria. He is an alumnus of NDC New Delhi and was research fellow at IDSA and has done PhD in defense studies. He is a regular participant in seminars, lectures in various institutions and writes for newspapers, journals, and contributes chapters in books. He is currently on the Executive Council of the Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis and Global Counter-Terrorism Council, and a distinguished fellow with Vivekananda International Foundation and Center for Land Warfare Studies. Please note that the views expressed by all our speakers on the platform are their individual views, and CKS is merely a platform hosting these talks. I request all the audience to put their questions in the chat box, addressing it to AVM Sinha at the end of the talk, so that the speaker is not disturbed while addressing us. We are currently live on Facebook page of CKS and other pages, and this talk will be also available on CKS YouTube channel shortly, along with all other social media handles. Now I request Air Vice Marshal Pranay Sinha, VSM, a veteran, to take the program further. AVM Sinha sir served Indian Air Force for the past 35 years and after his distinguished career was advisor to Bharat Electronics for 3 years. At present, for the last couple of years, he is engaged as strategic advisor to IIT Mandi. He is also instrumental in conceptualizing and organizing this flagship series, Thus Spake Generals. Over to you, Pranay Sinha sir. Thank you.
Thanks, madam. Viewers, Madam Sumitra Goenka ji is the Director Rating Infotech, CO Triangle Global, and our strongest pillar of strength of CKS India. Very good evening, viewers, to this inaugural talk of our flagship webinar, Thus Spake Generals. But before I invite the erudite, learned speaker of the evening, let me contextualize this subject for a minute. As per the news report, Xi Jinping, son of heaven, is scheduled to visit India for the G20 summit meeting on 9th and 10th September. And before that, hopefully, speculation is there may be some kind of resolution of two remaining standoff points in Ladakh, Depsang and Demchok. Of course, it's $1 million speculation. But one thing is very, very certain that the Red Dragon will continue with its unconventional forms of warfare against India. And that includes cyber warfare, environmental degradation through weaponizing the dams, spread of misinformation, etc. But they definitely can't use their favorite debt trap diplomacy against us. Instead, more likely that they may extract maximum trade concession. In fact, this unrestricted war or non-kinetic war in which salami slicing strategy plays a major role, wherein hegemonic expansionist China aggressively seizes some parcel of disputed territory and redraws the geopolitical map like it has done by grabbing islands in South China Sea, or it is attempting in Ladakh. This irregular aggression of China, also called gray zone warfare, provides China to straddle the line between war and peace by resorting very selective historical referencing, cartographic manipulation, leveraging the legal means like new border law. It exploits the situation of creating Zia Kong, well of border defense villages, as they have done in our case, to prevent the infiltration of Dalai Lama's pro-Dalai Lama elements or even the hostile forces. And it acts as a watch post. In fact, they have renamed recently some 11 villages in Arunachal Pradesh, and they state that it falls within their sovereignty. And they have done as per their administration of geographical names, they claim. This sort of gray zone warfare is going to increase as the contrarian economical scene is evolving in China, as you are all aware. Its real estate has collapsed, its economic engine is slowing down, unemployment is on rise, 21% at the last count. Therefore, to divert its aging population attention and to reclaim past imperial Han glory, the almighty Xi Jinping will behave more irrationally. And what he will do, what China will do to decode this type of gray zone warfare against India. Let's turn to keen China observer, scholar, soldier, General Dr. Rakesh Sharma. Sir, over to you, sir. Platform is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the Center for Knowledge Sovereignty and to Vinod Goenka ji and to AVM Pranay Sinha for this kind invitation to speak today. AVM Pranay Sinha has made very excellent beginning and set the stage across for the discussion for today. I also want to thank the man for for giving a short brief about myself. I'm honored by the kind words spoken about me. Now, the fact is that this gray zone has been spoken about quite a bit presently, and we have to disentangle ourselves, decode as the whole issue as to what's happening and what's going to happen in future. Because once we know what's happening and what's going to happen, we will be able to plan and prepare for this kind of situation that's developing between China and us. So my aim is firstly to make a little background. And the first question that I ask myself is, does absence of war in the way that we talk about war, does it mean if there's no war, does it mean that there will be peace in Indian context? As we say, there is no war today. But does that imply that we are having a peaceful time in India, especially in relationship to our external threats against us? So that is a basic central theme of my discussion now today. Now, I think time has passed for us to pass away the old shibboleths. Firstly, what defines war? When we talk about defining of war, we take our memory back to 62 war or 65 war or 71 war. And, we talk about those wars, we go back to those movies that we have seen in our mind where there are force on force and, people fighting on the borders. And, it's actually the terminology war meant between state and state. And in fact, United Nations has a definition for the word war. And it means that, armed forces fighting against one state, against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of another state. But as time passes, the term war and, the Clausewitzian model of war has changed. This is a post-Clausewitzian model where states are not fighting states. States are fighting non-state actors. Diplomacy is also a war, like what the Chinese tried to do, so-called wolf warriors all around. Economic wars. There are 6,000 sanctions against Russia today, levied by the West. That's an economic war. There are political wars, propaganda wars, there are trade wars, information war, cognitive war, dealing with the mind. War on pandemic is also a war on poverty. So the word war has changed. So what many thinkers said, war means that there are 1,000 casualties means a war, is not so much true. War is of all kinds. That's where gray zone comes to play. Now let me build a strategic context to this one. There is a peacetime and there's a wartime. War means an all conventional war. Here I refer to war as an all-out conventional war. Between peace and between all-out conventional war, which is on the borders and the battle space around it, there can be economic cooperation, there can be trade, diplomacy, there can be adversarial competition starts off, then one nation starts coercion of various types. That coercion and those transformations that comes up in the peacetime can be termed as gray zone warfare. The gray zone warfare having started, and then gradually it comes out to military coercion, proxy wars, which largely people call as hybrid, and then turns across to all-out conventional war. So the gray zone places itself into a format between war and peace. Now, when we say probability of a war, so we see last actual war we fought was Kargil, and before that was 71 war. And Kargil was not an all-out war; it was limited across to only one sector. The probability of an all-out war is therefore quite less. It is not common. It's not that there are plenty of conventional wars happening in the world even today. But having said that, the probability of a conventional war all out between two nations is much less. But it causes immense amount of casualties. The effect of an all-out war is tremendous. But the probability of a gray zone warfare, that's coercion of all types in peacetime, the probability is much higher. It may not cause so many of casualties. So we have to now prepare ourselves for a typology of war which may or may not be involving forces fighting each other. That is the point. And such kind of gray zone warfare also undermines the sovereignty of a nation. It puts us back into a mode of economic development that we are going through. So that probability of a war versus the effect of a war, is what issue needs to be debated. Now, here I come into one more issue about war, which I think very essential. In last 8-9 months, President Xi Jinping has been visiting many PLA formations and units. Now, everywhere he goes there, he says that you have to prepare for war. You must have victory in local war, dare to win, dare to fight and win, fight and win. These are terminologies he's using again and again. What is victory in war? How do we define it in the 21st century, 2023 and hereafter? What does President Xi Jinping imply by victory, winning? Does winning mean capture of territory? Does winning means capture of large number of prisoners of war like we did in 71? Does it imply that we are thinking of war means we'll destroy war fighting wherewithal, war fighting equipment, destroy some infrastructure? Or does it mean a regime change like the Americans tried in Iraq? What is victory in war? Now, I draw your attention to what's happening in Ukraine. Wars are messy affairs. You cannot guarantee the end state of a war. When the Ukraine war started, the President Putin had ordered his forces to go and go to Kyiv. They nearly captured Kyiv, but finally they could not do so and they withdrew away. So if the aim of the war was to capture Kyiv and change the regime, even now Russia might be occupying large amount of territory there. But fact of the matter is that its aim of changing the regime, aim of capturing Kyiv is no more there. So, war aims and war victories are nebulous issues. You cannot actually, if you see since Second World War, none of these great powers has ever won a war. You see, United States, it lost in Vietnam, it lost in Afghanistan, Russians lost in Afghanistan also. So in Chinese were in Korea got split into two parts. So which great power has ever won a war? So winning is a very nebulous concept, and it cannot be stated black and white as we say capture of territory means winning of war. So when we come to gray zone, as I mentioned, is an environment which is taken between war and peace. So it's called gray. If you say war is black and peace is white, then it's in between there. And the adversary aims at geopolitical ends. It may be territorial also in nature, but largely geopolitical ends, that without resorting to militaries crossing the threshold of an open warfare, is trying to achieve its geopolitical aims by taking large number of actions which will cause geopolitical aims to be achieved. That is a gray zone warfare, which is outside the realms about peacetime and of war. So if that is so, what is the characteristics anybody uses for a gray zone war? They are non-military in nature. They can be military, but can be non-military. They can unfold over a period of time. You can't even attribute, like, people say the 40,000 cyber attacks against India in 2022. You can't even attribute, heart to heart that it came from one direction, but you can't even attribute it across to an adversary. The aggressor uses risk of escalation as a kind of a coercive leverage. Also establish economic interdependencies. So in a time will come when you can take advantage of the economic interdependencies and cause problems, and target specific vulnerabilities in the nation. So having said that, I come to China. Now, Chinese, by nature, by history, by the strategic culture, we can go back to thousands of years. So we all know Sun Tzu said that to win 100 victories in 100 battles is not the acme of skill. To subdue the enemy without fighting is the acme of skill. That's Sun Tzu. Then later on in the Ming Dynasty, there was another thinker called Zhuge Liang. He said, wise win before the fight, while the ignorant fight to win. Then subsequently, this book came out, The Unrestricted Warfare, about 2 decades ago, a little more than 2 decades ago, where two colonels who wrote it. And it's a very, very fine, very thinking book. So, it must be read by all students of international relations and all that. Okay, what did these two colonels imply? And he said that new principles of war are no longer using armed forces to subdue or to compel the enemy to submit to your own will, but rather use all means, which also include armed forces and non-armed force, military, non-military, lethal, non-lethal, economic, everything, to compel enemy to accept their own interests. So in this very erudite presentation or erudite book, which was written 2 decades ago, these two colonels, Chinese colonels, had told us that what does the Chinese think about how to achieve their geopolitical aims. Now, I come to why does China take India to be a geopolitical challenger? Or does China take India to be a geopolitical challenger? We know Chinese are fixated about United States because they have a desire to reach their historic status, and they want to rise up to be a power to reckon with. They want to become a superpower. They challenge the United States. So their larger focus and their large development of military is aimed towards United States. Of course, they have issues about Taiwan. They have a very poor geography of maritime because they are boxed in from one side, from Japan right up to South China Sea. So they are not able to venture out. And then, of course, Taiwan is a very, very major issue with them. With all those problems, why does China take India to be a geopolitical challenger? Now, that's a moot question. People say that India is not in the focus of China, which is untrue. When you read about in the Chinese publication and literature, India is in the focus of the Chinese media and Chinese thinking people. So there is India has got a global legitimacy. Let's like it or not like it, we are globally legitimate. We have a global culture of non-aggression. We are also attractive to the world. We don't have to rush around with soft power and all these things to make countries like us. We are by nature of a being liked. We are attractive to the nations of the world, which China is not. President Xi says often again and again that we have to get attractive, or we have to get soft power going, or we have to get liked. But they may have influence over 150 nations because of economic relations. But that doesn't mean the 150 nations like China. They know when time comes, Chinese will trouble them, that like they have done to Zambia or to Pakistan or to Sri Lanka. So, while they take advantage of the Chinese deep pocket in finances, the larger number of nations do not tend to like China. But then the likability about India is strong for various reasons, historically, and even the way India is growing today. We are also, secondly, we have an economic growth path that's evident to the world. And the Chinese also understand it, that we are rising, we are sure on our feet, we are going. So there is a potential that people understand India has. Chinese also think India has a potential. If India rises to its potential, well, that makes India become a big challenger. So, that potential of India and our movement to reach that potential is what worries China. Third, is China is also a major competitor in South Asia, because all other nations are linked to India in very major ways. The South Asian nations, that is also an issue here. Fourth issue is this geostrategic location of India. Now, this 2,000 kilometers of peninsula jutting down south in the Indian Ocean, through which 60-65% of the Chinese trade passes through, becomes a very major anxiety for the Chinese, because there's no way that the 65% trade, and especially the oil that goes across from the Gulf and comes from Africa, can be avoided across. There are longer routes available to this one, but then this is a Indian Ocean, Indian presence there is what is major anxiety that the Chinese have. So what's the strategy of Chinese against India and gray zone? So there is obviously there's a strategy, it seems, of war avoidance. Chinese do not want to fight a war. That's the highest ideal. Don't fight a war, but they must conquer or achieve their aims without fighting the war. We start with these aims. So, and if Chinese understand if war is inescapable, then it should be through the minimum bloodshed and lowest cost possible to the combatants. So, if that's the aim, what will the Chinese aims against India be? Because now we have discussed India as a geopolitical challenger. One is that India's transition economically, politically must be held back. We should not be allowed to reach our potential. Keep us distracted, so as to say, from our economic growth paths. Make us more and more inward looking with hostile neighbors. So all our neighbors, Chinese invest large amount of money and they cause immense amount of create environment which is anti-India. Keep India busy into this gray zone, inimical activities throughout, in which one form or the other. And you see, when we followed 2019 elections in India, there was a website which belongs to TikTok and which is called Hello. Their website bought 10,000 slots for advertisements against the political entity. So, see, there is also a possibility of information operations, or also issue of electoral manipulation that the Chinese can carry out. So these are larger strategies that Chinese could have against us. Let me give some examples as to what Chinese have done. So if you say politically, Chinese have always blocked us in United Nations Security Council and the NSG. It has fought against India on all issues relating to Jammu and Kashmir in support of Pakistan. It is on JNK also on all the terrorists, Masood Azhar, and you name all of them. The Chinese always create a problem of declaring these people as international terrorists. In Gilgit-Baltistan, it took over 5,000 square kilometers of area in the Shakskan Valley from the Pakistanis, and now they have got great amount of mining concessions that they have taken across into this area of Gilgit-Baltistan. So they are trying to develop that areas and taken advantage of Gilgit-Baltistan. They are also supporting Pakistan in conventional military, and they have taken the CPEC and out through a territory which actually belongs to us. That is the Gilgit-Baltistan, Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. As rightly pointed out by AVM Pranay, for no reason, once they come up with Tibetan names for Arunachal Pradesh. What aim? One doesn't even understand the aim of what. Why should you give a name to villages and cities in Arunachal Pradesh? There are anti-India protests in China. There are strategic issues. The projects on Yarlung Sangpo, the bridges being the dams being built there. We understand China is a water-starved nation, but that doesn't mean you establish dams without informing the lower riparian Indian state, saying that we are making dam for purpose A and that we run off the water dam or whatever. But these dams are being built and water is likely to be siphoned away from Yarlung Sangpo, which is Brahmaputra, in times to come. They had done intensive build-up along the borders, intensive infrastructure, dual-use infrastructure being created along the borders. All these are examples of putting pressure onto India, which is, I say, gray zone. Recently, you would have heard that a spy ship came across to the Indian Ocean and that they tried to berth in Hanbantota, which we protested, and finally they were able to pressurize the Sri Lankans and did attacks there. It stopped at the Hanbantota port. Then, of course, information operations, there is a whole lot of literature on what information operations being carried out against India, cyber attacks against ONGC, cyber attack against Bombay, where electricity went away, Northern Grid, All India Institute of Medical Sciences last year, there is this year, then Leh power plants. So, when you start counting, while all this cannot be directly attributed, but in a study it comes out, and many foreign media have published documents to state that these cyber attacks against India are being carried out by the Chinese. I mentioned about this Hello app, which purchased 10,000 advertisements against the Indian polity in 2019, which is, actually trying to subvert. And we know electoral manipulation do take place. The Russians have been involved into manipulation of between Hillary Clinton and Trump elections. There have also been accusations of manipulation carried out when Brexit vote took place in UK. So there is major issues. And of course, they do malware against us. Now, when we talk, we actually come back to this issue of the line of actual control and what's been happening out here. It is also referred by AVM Pranay. AVM Pranay as what is being carried out across on the line of actual control. So why did China do so? No, immense amount of literature is out on saying why Chinese did so, and why are they seeking buffer zones, and why are they, doing what they are doing? It's 800 kilometers of border. It had multiple areas that Chinese had addressed it after bringing his 2 divisions across into this area. And when he came in here, it flouted all regulations and all protocols and all CBMs and refused to withdraw, even after now 3 years plus that had happened in Eastern Ladakh. Then in interim, he also tried to do that on the western side in Yangtze and also in Sikkim, once in Rakula. So, it's prodding along here, all along the border. It's establishing villages close to the border, dual villages where there is military and some people of the local origin also there. So the Chinese have come and in Eastern Ladakh occupied some, sat on the areas, denied us patrolling into the areas that we used to patrol, and thereby creating these buffer zones and actually kind of fixing the LAC in a manner that we are not able to do our task. The armed forces are not able to do their task across the line of actual, up to the line of actual control that existed. So it actually tries to ratchet up tensions by incursion across the land and air domains also. As you know, there are drones which have been spoken of, which come here and carry out this issue here. Now, we have to create conditions. It tries to create conditions across here to suit its territorial ends. So there is a moratorium on patrolling by calling fixation, which is called buffer zones, and of course, it keeps prodding it across. Now, the effect of it has been tremendous. Whatever reasons I'd say that there are now lakhs of people who are now deployed along, lakhs of troops of the Indian army largely, and of course the Air Force, deployed all along the line of actual control, which did not exist till 2020, because there is a distrust which has come in. So, and as a gray zone warfare, the Chinese have tied larger amount of forces along the borders, because we know Chinese have a nibbling issue here, which is also called salami slicing, but it nibbles across into the territory where there is vacant space, it will come and occupy it. So now because of the distrust, we have been tied down and actually dominating the entire sector. And then, of course, the demographic changes that he's doing along the borders is issue of anxiety to us. Now, what about non-military activities the Chinese are doing collusive? So, as you know, we have a trade of now getting on to be about $150 billion with Chinese. And you cannot get out of this trade because of obvious reasons, because Chinese are the largest manufacturer of the world and they produce goods at a cost-effective rate. So when you have to make final products, the intermediated products come across from the Chinese industry, which help us to make final products and, of course, also export outside. So the supply chains are so intricately linked that it's very difficult to totally divest ourselves. So, there can be constraints that Chinese can cause on non-militarily and on, say, pharmaceutical industry, which is largely dependent on APIs from China, IT. There are boilers being bought for nuclear plants. There is critical inputs into some kind of raw material, semiconductor chips. So when you total count it, we have a substantial trade, and this trade is always bound to be controlled in case need be by the Chinese. Though, of course, the effect of such kind of it will be on Chinese also. Second is that China's non-militarity exploits the cyberspace, electromagnetic spectrum, and also cognitive domains affect the mind of Indian population, either attributable or not attributable. So you sometimes see whole lot of nasty literature being published either directly or through Pakistan. So Pakistanis know India well. So in any one of the agitations, when we follow what all kind of social media, bakwas which is printed and sent across to our people, whether it's farms law agitation or even in Manipur now. So, there is always a possibility of Chinese and in support Pakistanis fanning troubles across India, in Indian communal issues or cause social disharmony or cause cohesion issue against India. So, this becomes a very serious threat, non-military threat against India, because he's trying to, cause effect on the Indian social cohesion, which is a very important issue here. And of course, keep Pakistan, Chinese keep pushing Pakistan to keep India stretched in constant terrorism in some areas, other in J&K. So, there were actually 53 odd attempts made last year for infiltration into India, despite the ceasefire, despite Chinese having the BRI issues with Pakistan, and despite Pakistan being in dire straits. Even then, attempts have been made to infiltrate. We found weapons which belong to Afghanistan in J&K. So it gives rise to the fact that Pakistan keep getting pushed by the Chinese to keep stretching India in terrorism. Then, of course, China also tried very hard to create relationship with South Asia, with Nepal, with Bhutan. Bhutan, of course, the discussions are on, but Bhutan has good relations with India, with Bangladesh, with Maldives, with Sri Lanka. So, with deep pockets, they made a port in Bangladesh, which has berths for 6 submarines and 8 frigates. Naturally, this requirement of the Bangladesh, because they don't presently have submarines. So, when Chinese make this one, it always gives a feel that, they're trying to threaten India by establishing such kind of thing. And, in doing so, it gets to put anti-India feelings along the periphery of India. Now, the cyberspace also, a large amount of equipment, large amount of electronic equipment, computers, laptops, routers, and you name it, have been purchased from the Chinese industry because of, naturally, they were cost effective. And then, so they are all prone to some kind of damage, especially in the banking sector or the power sector. So in peacetime, the Chinese can well do, and we know now that a large number of cyber attacks have taken place against India. Some of them I've referred to earlier in my talk here. So then the cyber is a very major issue in gray zone operations, by carrying on espionage or information operations or some kind of IP threats or malwares or hackers, and influence operation, electoral manipulation, some ransomware. Maybe at a particular time, Chinese can deny us, our critical infrastructure, in case Chinese are able to place such kind of cyber threats across into our equipment across there. So when it comes back to it, so at wartime, of course, the cyber attacks can go much higher, as happened in Ukraine and elsewhere. So there is a graduated differentiation on cyber attacks, cyberspace operations from peacetime up to wartime. Chinese are also in a big way trying to coerce us in the Indian Ocean, which is, they have 13, 14 ports being built all along Indian Ocean, from Tanzania, Mozambique, right up to Myanmar. So these ports are their way of development of these ports, and their way of putting pressure on India by using ships across to berth there. At any one time, 4 to 5 PLA Navy ships are in Indian Ocean, and this all causes immense amount of threat and anxiety across to us. And if we follow what the Chinese have done recently to Taiwan, it cuts the cable, it cut the internet cables across to Taiwan. It made there was no internet available, at least in some islands of Taiwan, is part of the last operation being carried out some time ago. So the threat to cables, internet cables, is there, and we have 2-3 places in India where the internet cables land up. So this becomes a threat across here, so the Indian Ocean, which is a major cause of anxiety for the Chinese, there is always a issue of carrying out threats across there. Now, there are also, I should mention the information operation. There is, in peacetime, there is always this cognitive attempt to psych the people of the other country. Now, this in peacetime is use all strategy, use narratives, create narratives at various stages, and exploit the political and some kind of societal fault lines to weaken national will. Now, we just cannot say it is attributed to China, but the fact of the matter is it is being attributed to some adversary, whether it comes from Chinese or Chinese proxy called Pakistan. And, Chinese have been known to have cyber, worked on cyber quite a bit. So there is always a possibility of attack on a critical infrastructure in peacetime, as we have heard across to power sector, which has happened in Dole dispatch centers and across into many other areas, including All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Now, I want to disaggregate the influence operations, I will largely call into 9 odd areas which Chinese are trying to influence us. First is entertainment industry, movies, very big way, because Chinese, since they have deep pockets and they have been funding movies, and they have a kind of a cooperative dialogue with the Indian industry. So that's why, Rockstar, when Rockstar was made, it was made in Dharamshala, and in Rockstar movie there was a banner saying "Free Tibet," and there's a song being sung, "Sadda Hak Etherak." And in that song, later on, the Chinese were able to coerce the filmmakers to remove the Free Tibet flag and the Tibetan flags from the movie. So that's a kind of coercion being carried out. In many ways, many of these movies which have come under gaze for us, saying that, and see, it's not new. It's not, in the United States, there is no movie produced against Chinese at all, because Chinese nearly own the entire Hollywood. They won't allow a movie to be produced which has got anti. And Chinese are one of the largest markets for seeing movies. So many of these movies which are made in India are the rights are given to Chinese, and they dub it into Chinese, and the movies are shown there. It's a large money earner in this game. So the fact is that there's always a possibility, and there are always, when you study the instances of influence being carried out here, there is also influence across to think tanks by some kind of dialogue, some kind of invitations across to think tanks and civil society organizations to come across to China and discuss issues. So they make it easy to travel there and easy to discuss there and look after the people across who they go there. Similarly, academia, so they also fund think tanks. There have been news items of a think tank being funded across there. Then, of course, mobiles. When you say, there was a news item today saying that iPhone 15 will be built in India, but the fact of the matter is iPhone 15 is only a percentage is in India. Rest all come from outside. So the technological sector investments are tremendous in China. We have been following Paytm, and many other institutions are funded by Chinese. Then, of course, Chinese embassy gets a large amount of publications of information warfare against us. Media. You would have heard this NewsClick story recently. Usse pehle there was a story of Daily Hunt. Daily Hunt was owned by the Chinese, and it came to light that, and that was a news aggregator pushing news across to people in India. 25 million users in India, Daily Hunt. But actually, it was owned by the Chinese, so all news were doctored, and news were all brought to this. Recently, one hears that Daily Hunt has been sold across to a Canadian firm. So there are youth dialogues, there are people moving across to China for village. So there is an attempt to coerce it. Then, of course, there's overt action, covert action, politicians, Recently, this NewsClick story, which comes to light, Singham, the money has been funded across to political organizations. Now, when they fund political organizations, they naturally want to eat their pound of flesh into this one. So these are important issues in constraining India here. So I would say that the Chinese effort to, in gray zone, short of war, from economics to coercion on the borders and military, to the maritime domain, to information operations, to cognitive operations affecting our minds, there is a vicious cycle across here. And this is attempting to achieve aims where you are, the advantage is being obtained by Chinese. And, in case tomorrow there are hostilities, Chinese would have already permeated into this game by taking advantage about cyber and many other operations that they can carry, electronic warfare or space, which they can carry out here. So the fact is, and before I end this talk here, this gray zone warfare is only stopped by the imagination of people. And, it is imagination which actually propels across us to be effective into any domain where the adversary can think of. The recipient nation, India, we have to be prepared for such kind of non-war military. They have got a law called non-war military activities. Chinese have a law like this passed last year. So this non-war military activities, we have to start thinking as to how we must, organize ourselves against this kind of warfare. So we have to create a detection threshold, a systemic under which we can detect such clandestine activities and covert operations as to what is happening, who is generating this, how is it being generated and affecting our people. And, we have to work to this end to attribute it, to say that this has been created and propelled across by the Chinese, because, then only they get cautious. And, if it is till the time we have attribution done, we are not able to take decisions politically or militarily or as a nation to counter it because of this clandestine nature of the gray zone activities to some extent. And of course, to the other end, which is the issues of border, which is military coercion being carried out simultaneously. So it is the kind of warfare being propelled by the Chinese against India, which they call non-war military activities, and we would call it gray zone warfare, is what we have to prepare ourselves against. And we need to create a strategy, and cross-governmental activities on only gray zone warfare. While we do think about military operations and military responses, we have to start contemplating as to what is the way that there is a cross-governmental synergy being to be created against our adversaries in a gray zone environment, and coordinate the interagencies response, because there are many agencies working on this end, and create a coherent command and control structure against gray zone warfare, because a war may or may not take place, or it may be much delayed, but this activity is on all the time, and it affects a nation like India, where it may be easier to find out what are the fault lines which needs to be effective and cause, effect on our internal cohesion. So we need to create policy against disinformation, a policy against cognitive operations which affect the minds of our people, and we have to build civil society capabilities. Every man must be told, you hear something inimical, you must pass it on. That's how we are able to collate information, create databases, and start working on addressing this content which is being carried out here. So I think my time is up, and I'll rest here. And if there are any questions, I'll take it on. AVM Pranay, it's yours, sir.
Yeah, thanks, sir. Thanks for this thought-provoking lecture. Very nicely explained from where this Chinese are getting this thought of gray zone or non-military war, whatever you call, and they will continue, as you said, sir, from their guru Sun Tzu, to subdue the enemy without fighting, and they will. And you has commented that they are viewing us as a geopolitical challenger, and because of maybe our likability of India is increasing, potential of India is increasing, geostrategic location is there. Sir, one thing, the likability of India, and you also said Beijing, they are very image conscious. They want, as Xi Jinping has keep repeating this thing, that public image has to be increased. The first question which arises, why we are going soft, and why we are not using our opinion and influencing the world that what China is China. And these questions have been asked by many of our regular viewers, including Dhanavir ji, that why we are not using the Tibet population which we have got, and all those forces against the psychological warfare against China, sir?
So I think whether we are using or not using, see, I'm not able to point out whether we are doing it or not, because rightly so, because we are in the realm of researchers and now no more policymakers. But having said that, I think the question has got immense amount of merit. There were times in 65 war, some of us, we were here alive, we used to see our own radios carrying out broadcasts against the Pakistanis. And, we followed those broadcasts even when we were kids, we were following those broadcasts across. And there were radio stations across made there. So does the Chinese or any adversary, Pakistanis, have their own cohesive issues, own problems? Let's find out their Achilles' their problems. And if they wish to do so to us, so we must respond back in equal measure on information. And if we are not doing it, I think the point is genuine that we need to plan this end, because these are adversaries. You like it or don't like it, there are adversaries here. We know people of Baltistan so well. We have villages who came to us in 1971 war, who are Balti people. We can affect disharmony in Baltistan or Gilgit or many other places, including Tibet, as we rightly pointed out. So the fact of the matter is that the thrust of the question is absolutely right. And I hope we are doing it. And if we are not doing it, we need to do something about it.
Sir, this lecture has really evoked a lot of questions, and there are a lot of comments also I can see. And Dharamveer, one of the question which you also have raised about that what we are doing about this border defense villages from our side. Sir, I think sir has very nicely articulated that yes, we can use it. Where we are using it or not, that is a question but that will leave to the policy matters, to the government of the day. And sir has very, very categorically explained that we need to have our strategy in place, and hope we are doing it. There are many questions thing which has been raised, that what we are doing again for let's say weaponization of dams which China is doing. This is by Mr. Dr. Janmajit Thakur. He is saying how question is introducing cloudburst and how we are doing preventing this sort of weaponization of water dams.
So the question is genuine. There are a series of dams being built across on Yarlung Sangpo, and we had a kind of agreement with the Chinese earlier to provide us hydrographical data across for all water which is being to be controlled into this manner, and water to be taken away from Yarlung Sangpo, because it will affect us. And it's not an easy proposition to take the waters across from there to the water-starved regions. There are two major rivers, Yellow and are already having problems about lack of water. But for us, the knowledge base, we have to keep pressurizing. These are international laws on lower and middle riparian states. There is an effect of Yarlung Sangpo water control, which also comes across to Bangladesh in a very big way, because Brahmaputra crosses across from Assam across to Bangladesh, and if there is water issues, then there are a problem across here. First is that we need to keep internationally pressurizing China, and also bilaterally taking up the issue, saying that you have to tell us as to what you're doing on the river. If they start making the great bend where the Brahmaputra takes a great turn and then turns inward and comes towards India, if they want to short circuit, because the loss of height there, if they want to short circuit something there and draw the water out, it will have tremendous amount of effect on water availability into Assam, Arunachal Pradesh and Assam, and of course Bangladesh. We need to monitor this data. If the Chinese are not providing it, then we have to get electronically wise to control, to have this data to be available to us through satellite and all other means to the exactitude possible and publicize it. That, there is a lower riparian state and middle riparian states which are being damaged by the water control mechanisms being carried out by the Chinese. Tibet is supposed to be the water tank of the world. So, and we know the Chinese, despite the fact that we have, they said they will provide us this data, they are not doing so. So our focus first is that we need to get the world aware that there is damage being carried out to the entire environment across in the Northeast by the dams being built here, and in case the dams propel water and take it away to the hinterland of the Chinese, and it will have tremendous amount of effect on us. So there are issues out here, and I'm sure they are under consideration by our government.
There is a interesting, in fact, question is there, but in the question also, it has got the answer also. Aniruddha Mishra, he's saying that India is strategic competitor for China. Then why and merely China wants to keep India engaged on various fronts from border to economic? Yeah, that's what Sir said. That because we are a geopolitical challenger perceived by China, they want us to box in. They want India to keep distracted. They want us to keep bogged down with our problems through the neighbors. And this is what Sir said. So yes, your observation has got the answer also. And then there is again Galaxy A51. This is again with the water treaty and river. We have answered. There is some comment that why can't we replace Madan Mohan Gupta ji? Why we can't replace one word in Article 30 of Constitution? Again, this is not relevant with Gupta ji with this theme of ours. It has got a different connotation, and many people are asking, sir, how, which you have also raised, that how we should tackle this China's misinformation campaign. Of course, you have elaborated. May like to again throw more thought to this. How to tackle misinformation. And another question of Dharamveer, which we have answered, that by conducting, say, recent, there was a conference with Lobsang Pende and representative of the Tibetan Parliament in exile, and Umit Hamid, a prominent Uyghur freedom fighter. So do it serve purpose? So yes, it serves purpose, but sir, you may like to answer.
So the information warfare and the cognitive operation, I think, are the most important issues that we need to address today. And, because this is actually affecting the whole nation. Now, who does the cognitive operation? We don't even have an agency in India which is contemplating cognitive operations. And, we are multiple agencies which are not talking about agencies which are, work on cyber in India. So, there is a need for understanding that this is going to last for a long time. Even if war takes place or doesn't take place is a separate issue, shooting war. But this will continue. Now, we have to address it. We need to create a cognitive warfare agency within India where there would be not Fajis. It doesn't require Faji. It requires sociologists. It requires anthropologists, people who think in that manner, who know the sociology of the adversary country as to what is happening, and create a philosophy of combating cognitive warfare against the adversary. This is, I think, the primary issue out here. Second, about the information warfare. Now, undoubtedly, we have to energize the civil society. What happens is, anything adverse gets viral. Anything good, it's actually buried under it. Any retraction, it never finds the light of the day. I also don't forward a retraction forward, but there is something nasty against us, I also tend to forward it. That is the issue where the civil society has to be told that somebody is putting some nasty information against our country. we have to take it with a pinch of salt. The nation has to be prepared. And then there has to be a proactive manner. Once it gets viral, it's impossible to control it. Information warfare and cognitive warfare are the key of tools, and cyber, of course. Cyber is a medium under which information move. They are the key for us to address it, because it's actually gone haywire, rampant, and we need to sort these things out.
Yes, General has a very vividly has, and very in a subtle way, he has put it that the China is wary of kinetic warfare. So they may not go for the full-fledged war. But yes, he also hinted that this gray zone warfare is going to continue. We, our civil society, the government of India, and we all we have to prepare for this challenge. Thanks, sir. Thanks for this thought-provoking and very eloquent this thing. We are over an hour. Over to you, ma'am. Sumitra ji, ma'am. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So, on behalf of Center for Knowledge Sovereignty CKS, I wish to thank Lieutenant General Dr. Rakesh Sharma, sir, for the thought-provoking talk about Chinese grey zone warfare against India. I'm sure the listeners are very enlightened today about this Chinese strategy. I also thank AVM Sinha, sir, for moderating the session beautifully. Finally, I thank all the members of the audience for joining in today, and your constant support encourages us to do such programs on our platform. Next Sunday, 27th August at 5 p.m., we will be back with another session, Thus Spake Generals Season 5, with Air Marshal Anil Khosla, sir, on strategic evolution of Indian Air Force. So please join us with the same link. Thank you all.